At a moment when the world is shifting faster than ever, India finds itself standing at the crossroads of history. For decades, New Delhi carefully balanced its relationships between the United States, Russia, and China. But now, as America raises tariffs to punishing levels and openly threatens India's export lifelines, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has flown to China for the first time in 7 years, where he is sitting at the same table with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. This single trip may mark a dramatic turning point, not just for India's foreign policy, but for the entire global order. When Modi stepped onto Chinese soil, it wasn't just a diplomatic visit, it was a statement to Washington. America had believed that India, as part of the Quad and as a rising democracy, would remain firmly within its orbit. But the new tariff war has changed everything. With a sudden 50% hike on Indian goods, particularly targeting the diamond industry of Surat, and a wide range of exports, the United States has applied direct pressure on one of the strongest engines of India's economy. Families in Gujarat, exporters across Mumbai, and manufacturing hubs in Tamil Nadu have already begun to feel the pinch. And while Washington claims the move is a response to India's continued purchases of Russian oil, many in India see it as an insult, a punishment handed down by a so-called ally. In Beijing, however, Modi found a different tone. Xi Jinping welcomed him with careful words, emphasizing cooperation within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Vladimir Putin, facing his own set of Western sanctions, saw in Modi a partner who understood the value of resisting American pressure. To the outside world, the optics were clear. While the US was trying to corner India, China and Russia were pulling India closer. This is the kind of stagecraft that resonates not only in New Delhi, but in capitals across the global south, where leaders are watching to see if India will truly emerge as the voice of the multipolar world. The symbolism of Modi meeting Xi after 7 years cannot be understated. The border tensions in Ladakh remain unresolved, and the memories of Galwan are still fresh. But the reality is that economics and geopolitics often override even bitter rivalries. India cannot ignore China's role as the world's manufacturing hub, nor can China ignore India's massive consumer market and its growing role in global supply chains. The SCO summit, therefore, became a theater where the future was quietly being negotiated, not through press releases, but through the mere fact of who was shaking hands with whom. Meanwhile, back in Washington, the narrative is very different. Officials in the Trump administration argue that tariffs are necessary to punish what they call unfair trade practices. But the backlash has been fierce. Former National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan openly admitted that America's global brand is collapsing under this tariff war, and that India, instead of being brought to heel, is drifting closer to Beijing and Moscow. In other words, the United States may have triggered the very outcome it feared most, the rise of an independent India that no longer dances to Washington's tune. The ripple effects are already visible. Oil shipments are being rerouted. Indian exporters are exploring alternative markets in the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America. BRICS nations are rallying around the idea of reducing dollar dependency. And ordinary people in Surat and beyond are asking hard questions. Why should India sacrifice its economic interests just to satisfy the strategic anxieties of the United States? The answers are not simple, but the anger is real. This is where the deeper story unfolds. India has always cherished the principle of strategic autonomy. From Nehru's non-alignment policy during the Cold War to the delicate balancing act of the 1990s, India has never wanted to be tied to a single power. The US believed the Quad and defense pacts would change that. But in reality, India still thinks of itself as a civilizational state that must chart its own destiny. The SCO stage in Beijing was the perfect reminder that India does not see itself as a junior partner to anyone. It sees itself as a pole in a multipolar world. But can India afford to take this path? That's the big question. On one hand, America remains a massive trading partner, a vital source of technology, and a key player in the Indo-Pacific strategy against China. On the other hand, the tariffs have made it clear that Washington will not hesitate to weaponize trade against New Delhi. For Modi, the calculation seems to be that India must diversify, leaning on Russia for energy security, exploring China for pragmatic engagement, and deepening ties with the global South to avoid overdependence on the West. Imagine for a moment the perspective from Washington. For decades, strategists dreamed of pulling India permanently away from Russia and counterbalancing China with India's rise. But now, by squeezing India with tariffs, the US risks accelerating the exact opposite, a stronger Moscow-Beijing-New Delhi axis. And that's why this moment feels so historic. It's not just about a tariff or a summit, it's about who gets to define the 21st century order. The consequences will not play out overnight. It may take years to see how India redefines its place in the global chessboard. But what is certain is that India's choices today are being watched by every corner of the world. Will India lean west, despite the bitterness of tariffs and pressure? Or will it carve out a new identity as a leader of the non-Western world, standing shoulder to shoulder with Xi and Putin when it suits, but always keeping its independence intact? As Modi speaks in Beijing, as the SCO meetings conclude, and as markets react to the ongoing tariff battle, the larger story is this: India is no longer the quiet participant. It is the swing state of geopolitics, the wild card that can tilt the balance of global power. America may have underestimated how much India values its autonomy. China and Russia may overestimate how much India is willing to align. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between, in India's unique ability to play both sides while building its own path. This is why the world is watching so closely. Because in this drama, India's every move will ripple across supply chains, energy markets, and security strategies. The handshake in Beijing may seem like just another diplomatic gesture, but for Washington, it may be the warning sign that its old strategies no longer work. For Moscow and Beijing, it is the hope of a new alignment, and for India, it is a reminder that in the age of multipolarity, survival depends not on choosing a camp, but on mastering the art of balance. So when you see the images of Modi alongside Xi and Putin, don't just see a photo op. See the tectonic plates of history shifting beneath our feet. See the beginning of a story that could redefine not just India's future, but the entire global order. And remember, the tariff war may be America's move, but the next move belongs to India.